All right, we are breaking it down now as Washington debates the debt ceiling and taxes. The underlying issue bubbling under the radar in Congress and certainly in the media is trade and jobs. For the last 5 years, both President Bush and President Obama pushed a series of so-called free trade agreements with South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. As you learn of these deals, each one stinks worse than the next. And in a new two-part series done in collaboration with the Huffington Post, which we call Trading Our Future, we show how trade deals may be dangerous to our financial and employment health.
There are a few things that we can and should do right now to redouble our efforts on behalf of the American people. Today, Congress can advance trade agreements that will help businesses sell more American-made goods and services to Asia and South America, supporting thousands of jobs here at home.
These agreements are modeled on the 1993 North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. NAFTA was the hottest issue in the election year of '92 when presidential candidate Ross Perot had the strongest third-party challenge in modern American history, making trade his best and really only issue.
Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
Many on the left opposed NAFTA as well, because it not only lowered trade barriers, but allowed foreign companies to sue states for passing environmental, labor laws that would cut back profits. The Ralph Nader-led group Public Citizen was right in the battle.
This must be stopped. The loss of control, the loss of sovereignty, the loss of democracy, if this NAFTA were approved, cannot be underestimated, which is why Public Citizen, who's fought for a long time for these kinds of laws, is standing up with all of our coalition partners to say, this NAFTA must be stopped.
By 2008, no presidential candidate would admit to supporting NAFTA.
Was NAFTA a mistake?
NAFTA was a mistake to the extent that it did not deliver on what we had hoped it would. And that's why I called for a trade timeout.
And then candidate Obama promised to amend the agreement with stronger protections for the USA.
There's no doubt that NAFTA needs to be amended.
But NAFTA still remains in effect, jobs continue to flow abroad, and now 3 similar deals are on the table. These are with South Korea, a major auto and electronics producer, Colombia, a leader in anti-union violence, and Panama, now a global tax haven and money laundering center. And joining us now, Lori Wallach, Director of Public Citizen's Global Trade Watch, along with Leo Hindrey, Chairman of the U.S. Economy Smart Globalization Initiative at the New America Foundation, former Chief Executive at AT&T Broadband. It's a pleasure to welcome both of you. Leo, what would this president be possibly thinking to entertain 3 more rigged trade deals with 3 questionable countries at this point, South Korea, because of the way they use North Korean labor and fund the North Korean government?
You know, Dylan, I look back to Iowa, and I was in Iowa for the 2008 campaign, and I remember vividly this president, then a candidate, saying that over his dead body on South Korea, on Panama, and on Colombia, and I took him at his word. And now we're seeing these agreements come to us for a vote with his encouragement, and it breaks my heart. We will lose tens and tens, hundreds of thousands, in fact, of jobs. We will further eviscerate our manufacturing sector, which we need to in fact, invigorate. And the broken word on these agreements can only be explained by politics. There seems to be a trend within this White House to run towards something called the center when there is no center on trade. You either believe these agreements are supposed to be for the good of the American worker and the good of the American economy, or you believe otherwise. And
otherwise being it's more profitable for certain American businesses to get rigged trade agreements where then they can then benefit from that sucking sound Mr. Perot was talking about.
We sold our soul on these agreements way back in 1985 when we passed the first of them with Israel in 1985. There have been 11 of them since then in total. 3 more are pending, and not a one of them will keep their promises. We will have lost, as Lori will talk about better than I can here in a few minutes, we will have lost millions of jobs to the aggregate. Not a single promise has been kept, not one. A colleague and I went back recently and looked at every one of the promises as well, and everyone has broken the agreement, as Mrs. Clinton said in that debate back in Iowa.
Lori, is there any evidence that the trade-off to get cheaper tchotchkes for people like you and me is in some way a net benefit for all the lost jobs and everything else?
You can actually now do the numbers. And theoretically, trade helps us on the import side by providing less expensive goods. But the loss that we suffer because these kinds of trade agreements offshore huge numbers of different kinds of jobs now nets out negative. That is to say, even when you save on some goods, the loss in U.S. income means, on average, the median $7,000 per person a year.
I want to talk about two of these agreements that I learned these in the podcast that I did with you, Lori, that stunned me. This first on Panama, and this is from the WikiLeaks drop, a State Department secret memo to Panama in 2006. So this is from our State Department to Panama in 2006. It goes as follows. It says, this is American government. The Panamanian incorporation regime ensures secrecy, avoids taxes, and shields assets from the enforcement of legal judgments. Oh, it's not funny. I can't believe it. Along with its sophisticated banking services, Panama remains an environment conducive to laundering the proceeds from criminal activity and creates a vulnerability to terrorist financing. Why would we want to do a free trade agreement with these people?
Well, we would want to do it because the big U.S. banks want us to do it. Why do we want to have this agreement with South Korea? Because the big U.S. multinational corporations want us to have it. And why do we want to do this tawdry agreement with Colombia when it slays every day labor leaders in its country? We want it because agricultural interests in the United States want it to happen.
And those interests, whether it's the banks, the corporate leaders, or the agricultural entities, all basically offer the promise of giving money to contribute to the $1 billion Barack Obama needs to run for president next year. Is that how you explain why the president has broken his word on trade quickly?
There has to be, Dylan, some reason, and I think it has to be in the money trail. Nothing about these three agreements, as Lori and I can prove to you, has changed from his promise never to enact them. Suddenly they're attractive to this administration, and they're trying to be pushed through Congress. It has to be a money trail.
All right, listen.
But Dylan,
yeah, quickly, go.
Here's the thing. This does not happen unless Congress approves them. So as tawdry as this whole story is, folks, it's up to us. Obama may have flip-flopped and started pushing job-killing, NAFTA-style agreements, but nothing happens to us unless Congress agrees, and that's all of our jobs, to make sure that they don't.
You're great at telling us how to do that. If all of us do what to tell Congress, what happens?
Everyone needs to call their member of the House of Representatives. It's incredibly easy. You don't even have to know for sure who it is. Just have your zip code, call this Capitol switchboard. A key number for all to know, 202-225-3121. All utility number, 202-225-31. And here's the thing. If you feel nervous about the details, go to our website, which is tradewatch.org. Yep. You can find out about the job losses from Korea for every congressional district. You can find out about the import safety problems. You can even find out how these agreements would undermine the bank re-regulation. Everything you need is there, and then make that call and tell your member of Congress their job is going to be the next one that's going to be lost.
Hear,
if
hear.
they don't vote for you on these trade agreements and stop these offshoring agreements.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you so much, Leo. I will see both of you sooner than later, I'm sure. Part 2 of our series tomorrow. And if you want to learn more about trade deals like the Panama Free Trade Agreement, check out our new blog, which is up right now on the front page of the Huffington Post. If you want tawdry details, that's where you'll find them on Panama. Coming up here on Hardball Chris, following the latest politicking on the debt ceiling. But first, NFL star Dhani Jones, a man making big plays on and off the field, here to tell us about his, let's say,